Ahtna Dene people of Alaska, Ahtna Dene, Sandra Kagos Chaka, Shaginoff-Stuart, and Jessica Nani Ahtna Dene will be presenting this unit. This presentation will look at Athabaskan people or Dene people and cultures. We'll start out with the geography of the region, including both the environment and then the homelands. We'll then continue with other various terms, names, languages that are being spoken about in Athabaskan Dene people. Then we'll move on to explore the Dene past, and we'll gain some insight at looking at some documents and also some history of Dene people. We'll wrap it up with exploring some of the current issues of language and revitalization. This by no means is a complete or all-encompassing overview of everything that's currently happening in the lives of Ahtna Dene, Athabaskan peoples and communities. This unit is designed to give an introduction and also a resource so that you'll be able to dive deeper into any subject that you have an interest in. On this homepage here, you can see that there is a gentleman here with a fiddle, and this is an Athabaskan tradition, fiddle music, and the Athabaskan Dene fiddle is a music style distinct from all other folk music. And this is done further up north, but a lot of our Ahtna Dene people have also participated in the fiddle festival, which also is the music of the fiddle. So there is a lot of history there, as the fiddling started in 1940s when the violin and the fiddle were brought into the Yukon Athabaskan area, both in Canada and Alaska by the Hudson Bay Company workers. In the past 150 years, it was developed by various players all over in Athabaskan Dene communities and now is recognized as its own genre with an annual Athabaskan Dene Fiddle Festival held each November in Fairbanks. So I'm going to play this video for you.
This is the Athabaskan Fiddlers Association, Inc.'s annual Fiddle Festival, and this is our 31st year in existence. I have been volunteering probably for most of the 31 years, and it's awesome. My grandparents, they used to listen to this music. You know, it's music that was brought to us.
My grandfather from Nolato, Alaska, he played music. He played the mandolin and the fiddle. Those are popular instruments back in the early 1900s. And I learned that the trappers and miners would come down the Yukon River and teach the native people these dance steps and jigs and reels on the fiddle. And so my grandfather learned how to play by ear. So I watched my grandpa play and learn. So then today I'm happy to say I'm part of the Athabaskan Fiddlers. And I just feel like family here.
Our elders are pretty much, you know, they're clean and sober people. They don't drink or use drugs. And when I think the Fiddle Festival started, they decided that it's going to be no alcohol, no drugs.
I'd rather die young than to go alone.
When I was a young girl, going to the dances, and I always remember seeing alcohol and violence. And today, that's not part of our music. We're changing, we're becoming more healthy, and our children are learning from us.
It's such a, to me, a healthy atmosphere. I've been like clean and sober for 26 years now. I had been abused as a small child sexually by about 6 men from age 2.5 to age 4. Having this sobriety, this sober life, and being able to enjoy everything to a fuller extent than I did before, that keeps me like wanting the lifestyle that I have. And this is one of the things, out of everything you can support here in Fairbanks, Alaska, this is one of the things I will support, you know, until I'm, you know, can't do it anymore. So this is where I choose to volunteer every year. Anything they put on, I'm there.
Okay, thank you so much.
So that's just a little video on the music that has brought here, but also has developed into its own genre. So we're going to look at a little bit of the geography, and we went over a little bit in class before or when we met face to face, but the Athabaskan or Dene territories are a boreal forest, as we probably know that. This map shows the extent of the boreal forest around the world, and as we can see, it goes clear across our circumpolar region here. And it's a huge impact on the Athabaskan lifestyle, both socially and culturally. Many groups traveled extensively to maintain access to resources. Usually groups were smaller, however, came together for celebrations. During the winters in the interior of Alaska, and this affects also the Ahtna territory, it can get down to 65 below or colder, and in the summer it gets really warm to the 80s or the 90s in some cases. And it also goes from extreme cold to warm in a very short period of time. And of course, our summers have a lot of sunlight, which is very nice. And we have some dark times also, but everyone lives for the summer. Lifestyles were also influenced by the river systems in Alaska. All the rivers have fish, including the salmon runs, and also in smaller rivers. Transportation on the rivers was very important for the summer and winter. And so a lot is circled around the seasons. Also, in addition to fish, there's also a lot of big animals and mammals, such as caribou and moose, and smaller animals such as muskrat and squirrels, and different kinds of birds that are featured in the people's diet. Due to carrying capacity of this land, which means how much land do you need to sustain a group of people, people had to move around in order to not deplete the resources. And that was a very strong value of the Ahtna Dene people, is that you don't deplete the resources that are there. You learned about where to hunt, how to not take from as much as you need, and just what you need to sustain yourself and your family, and you moved on so that others can utilize the resources, and the resources can regain their strength also. So there was a reciprocal kind of balance to work with nature to survive. So it was a very great system that they've had for millions of years, and our Ahtna people have sustained themselves through these harsh winters and extreme hot weather. So here's a map, a language map that was published by the Alaska Native Language Center in Fairbanks. And as you can see here, the Athabaskan region is a large region all throughout Alaska. And there are many languages here. There's 11 distinct languages, as we talked about before on this map. And many of them prefer to use their Dene languages, and also the preferred names, not just Athabaskan or Dene. There in Alaska, we have the Gwich'in, Han, Koyukon, Tanana, Tanacross, Upper Tanana, Upper Kuskokwim, Ahtna, Holilachuk, Degimnog, and Dena'ina. On the newer version of the online map, they also include place names, which is really awesome that they have that. This map, of course, is too small to see any of the place names, but they do have some place names. We also want to note that the Dena'ina people are they are the only people that are that live on the coast. Otherwise, all Athabaskan and Dene people are inland. Looking at the other map, we have the Na Dene map, which connects us also to the southern regions of Athabaskan people or Dene people, and also through Canada. So it is international connections that we have is with Canada. And there's also a connection with the Ket language in Russia, which is still being learned about and studied. But many of the other regions that we are related to through language is the Pacific Northwest, Hoopa, for example, and the Southwest, with relations to the Apache and the Navajo people. In linguistic terms, the Na Dene languages separated out the northern Na Dene languages, and that includes Canada and the northern Na Dene speaking people. These languages, although far apart, are also closely related with pronounced terms or pronunciations. For example, in my language of Ahtna, Gah is pronounced nearly the same in Navajo. This shows that some of the terms and items are completely the same, even though there's much distance. We have much similarities with many of the languages throughout Canada and the Southwest. On this map, we can see this is the area of Ahtna, and it also shows the different dialects that are in the Ahtna area. So we have the upper, lower, central, and western. And within each of these regions, they also have all the villages that are in these regions that would speak the upper dialect, the lower dialect, the central dialect, and the western dialect. And you can see that here, the upper is Mentasta, and Lower Chitna, Lower Todsina, some people in Copper Center, Central Copper Center, Taslina, Glen Allen, Golcana, Gakona, and some Chistachina. Western is Cantwell and Delna, Sutton, Tyone Village or Chickaloon, Valdez Creek, and some of Talkeetna. So as you can see, it's a huge region, and it's where all of you work. And it's very important to know of these different dialects and also learning the language, how different a word may be, it can be understood, but we're, as language learners, we are trying to learn many of these dialects together so that we can understand each other and be able to speak with others through a larger range of learning, because language is identity, and each one of these dialects we need to help preserve, and we need to record where they're from, because there's much information or much knowledge in each of these words that where they're from, because they describe the area and is connected to the land. So it's very important. Also knowing within all of these clans or all of these dialects, there are clans, and clans are different, where that's how we connect together with Palaches, who do we help support, and the people that we are the same with clans. So it's a very huge and successful social system that has been for our Ahtna people for many years and many thousands of years, that have helped sustain many of our societies. Many people organize their activities and daily lives based on what is needed to be done during the specific season and part of the year. Natural resources available in their environment and tasks that needed to be completed govern subsistence activities and social lives in a cyclical pattern. So that is what a lot of our activities were determined on what was happening in our environment at that time. So thinking about a different system of Alaska Native knowledge, this is from the Alaska Native Knowledge Network, and it shows a round cycle of what activities would be done in each of these months. So it's a different kind of thinking about, other than with a Western kind of lens of thinking about time, and it is thought more closely to a linear kind of thinking of what happens now. We go to school, school happens, or work, or we have a time to be there and then time to come home. Whereas this is focused on what is happening in our environment and what's happening outside and how the animals are moving, and if they're available at this certain time, then you go where the resources are. So you would go to fish camp in the summertime, and then you wouldn't live there during the winter time. You would go to another place to live. Also with the hunting, you would go to that hunt camp and then be able to harvest, take care, and then bring back. So same with berries, and when the harvest comes for vegetation, when all the greens are coming up, you would take care of those greens. Also, you couldn't make baskets during the winter time, so you would make baskets at a certain time of the year. That's when you had to get your baskets done so that you can use them for storage for the rest of the year. Also, when you made your oils had to be made at a certain time. It couldn't be, held and kept. Although now we have storage such as refrigeration, which makes it's a game changer for many of our foods and items that we can store, but nothing beats just getting it done for that time. and learning that craft, learning that skill to have it completed, and how our people were so efficient and able to utilize many of the resources that were available and getting it done. And one of them I kind of think about it, which is amazing to me, is moose hide tanning, whereas the moose hide tanning had to be done at a certain time, and they knew exactly how to do it, how to preserve it. And it's much work, but they knew how to take care of it, knew the process, knew the chemical reaction that happens naturally to an animal skin, and when and what to do next for the next process. That takes a lot of science. And I think that's an amazing skill that we are still, as language learners, are still trying to master. So this is a map, or not a map, I'm sorry, pictures of the Tanana chiefs. And I wanted to share this with you because this was a very significant time during the 1915s, where there was much happening in Alaska at this time. And Athabaskan chiefs got together and decided that they were going to create the Tanana chiefs. And with this, they were going to make sure that when people were going to go through their lands, that they were going to protect the lands of the people, because there was much movement at that time of just utilizing the resources, people coming into Alaska who were not native, who were not of the country, and they were just taking the resources. And so this was something that was very significant at the time, and they were able to kind of manage or look at some of the health issues that were happening. And they wanted to have some kind of resource for their people, as there were many different diseases happening at that time. And they wanted to have help and resources for those diseases that were coming. So health was a big portion. And this was a picture of the Tanana chiefs, and also with Judge Wickersham, who was able to help create this and move this forward. And as you can see here, many of these chiefs have their regalia, or their outfits, their custom made chief jackets, and many of them also wore dentalium shells, as you can see here with the long white shells there. And as you guys know, along with working with the Park Service, that you see very many of the dentalium shells, and those were considered money, and very wealthy men, wealthy families. And so not everybody wore these. Not everybody could wear them. We're supposed to wear them. And even nowadays, it's a lot different, whereas many people wear these shells because they're more readily available. Whereas in their time, in 1915s, it was very rare to have that showed who they were as the status in their village. And they were considered big men. So I thought this was very significant in sharing as part of the past of the Dene people that affected many of our villages throughout Alaska. And also what a wonderful picture to see what people wore. And many of these coats, of course, are moose hide or caribou, depending upon where they're from, and beaver fur, and very elaborate. So this was also a little short video that I wanted to share with you about how the oil has affected our Native people in this 1970s. And this was very significant, especially for the Ahtna people, because the pipeline, as you know, comes straight through Ahtna land. And this is how it affected the people in the 70s.
the investment that we had concentrated, the image that we had built up on this pipeline is the only means of income to the Ahtna and its people. That's all gone now. And as far as survival, we don't know where to turn now.
Roy Tansey, president of Ahtna Incorporated, and he's got problems. His native corporation is facing tremendous loss of revenues, chronic unemployment for the local population in Copper Center, and a general uneasiness over what the future may bring. These problems stem from that long tube running the length of Alaska, the Trans-Alaskan Pipeline, and the company that runs it, Alyeska. More about the problem later. First, what is Ahtna?
Ahtna is a small regional corporation, and Ahtna, the stockholders of Ahtna are all one people. They're all Athabaskans. It's just proud, I'm just proud to be part of the Ahtna Regional Corporation.
Created by the Native Claims Settlement Act, Ahtna is the smallest of 12 regional corporations with a native population of 675. Ahtna is Athabaskan for the people of the Copper River, the area they now live in. Even though they are small, they have done well financially. They were the first regional corporation to pay dividends to their stockholders. But the area means more to the people than financial deals. To 79-year-old Jimmy McKinley, who built this cabin in 1916, it's home. He is an elder of the Ahtna region and sang for us, in traditional Athabaskan, a song he wrote about the region and the pipeline.
Pipeline that you because you let pipeline that you because you let Ahtna lost because you let Ahtna lost.
We have some beautiful mountains and a beautiful Copper River, and the land itself is just beautiful.
Pipeline that you because
And this was where the Ahtna is people that lived in this area for thousands of years.
Goal setting and careful planning are key ingredients to any corporation that wants to be successful. In Ahtna's case, Professor Dean Olson has played an important role as business advisor.
Early on, Ahtna, the board adopted a policy of investing at home. To Ahtna, that means investing in the Copper River Basin area. The goals that it seeks to move toward fulfillment are profitability, employment, and control.
Some of the corporation's investments have included this $1.5 million hotel and the buying of 3,000 shares of stock in the native-owned United Bank, Alaska. But by far the heaviest investment has come from pipeline-related contracts.
It's fundamentally important. It's by far and away the majority of our after-tax income.
Ahtna is unique. It owns the only privately held land that the pipeline was built on. The pipeline crosses Ahtna's land for 55 miles, and the corporation feels they are in a good bargaining position with regard to Alyeska. Not only is the pipeline a major source of income for the Ahtna Corporation, it also provides the local people with jobs.
There's no other work in this area at all. Work.
In 1969, the Secretary of the Interior put pressure on the corporation to cooperate, let the pipeline go through their land. Ahtna granted Alyeska the right-of-way for $1 and what was called other valuable considerations, meaning contracts and jobs. This was significant because the government felt Ahtna could have successfully filed suit against the pipeline construction on their land.
About $2 billion. It will held the construction of the pipeline up for probably a year, 18 months.
Construction began and the pipeline was built, but the Ahtna Corporation complained Alyeska had taken an 8-mile wide corridor rather than a 200-foot right-of-way that was negotiated in the 1969 release. Again, the Secretary of Interior stepped in and negotiated an agreement called Omnibus.
The Omnibus is an agreement which is designed to describe the basic relationship and the overall relationship between Alyeska and Ahtna. Ahtna agrees there in the Omnibus Agreement to provide uses and rights to land. In exchange for that, Alyeska provides to Ahtna the right to do all work where the pipeline crosses native land during maintenance and during construction operation, and the opportunity to bid for work on non-Indian lands.
Since the Omnibus Agreement in 1974, things have gone relatively smooth for Ahtna. The corporation formed joint ventures with other companies to work both on and off Ahtna land. The joint venture was named Meridian Contracting. At one point, 70% of the Meridian employees were native. Things went well until spring of 1978. Alyeska contracted with another company to work off Ahtna land. Ahtna called for arbitration as specified in Omnibus. Arbitration is still pending, but in the meantime, Alyeska has awarded another contract for maintenance.
So what happens when Alyeska gives a contract to somebody else?
It clearly is a significant financial threat to the company.
What section of the Omnibus Agreement do you feel that Alyeska is in violation of?
They're in violation of Section G.
Section G reads as follows. The parties agree that with respect to any of the aforesaid rights in the land of Ahtna or its villages set forth in Sections A to F, Ahtna is to have the opportunity to do all construction and maintenance work or other required work thereon.
Ahtna is not doing that work right now. We've sought repeatedly to get to the negotiating table with Alyeska people to work out a contract relationship to provide the services on Indian land. Alyeska has not been forthcoming. We attended a meeting yesterday morning where they didn't even show up. So, as I said before, we're confronted with a group, an affiliate of major oil companies that clearly does not desire to deal in good faith.
Olson said Alyeska is also in violation of Section H, which reads in part, all such bids will be evaluated on the basis of Ahtna's capability of performance and by whether its bid price therefore is reasonably competitive. Currently, Ahtna is doing no contract work for Alyeska.
What's happening now for the 55 miles?
They are in trespass. What services are being provided by Alyeska and their contractors are being provided in violation of Omnibus. Hence, they are trespassers, and they will be sued for being trespassers.
As of October 1st, Ahtna has sealed off all access roads that lead to the pipeline where it crosses native land.
First we put up the barrel, didn't have any effect. Later on we chained that bar, the one bar there, theirs, and locked it, padlocked. They cut that.
They finally dumped gravel on the road to prevent Alyeska from gaining access to the pipeline.
Resolution number 4 regards Ahtna's dispute
At this year's annual convention, the Alaska Federation of Natives unanimously supported Ahtna's actions and urged Alyeska to live up to the Omnibus Agreement. But because of the dispute, chronic unemployment exists in the Copper River area. 34 out of 37 natives who worked on pipeline maintenance have been laid off. How many of you people are out of work now?
All of us.
Why? What happened?
Well, we lost the contract. It was taken away from us, given out. So then we're out of a job now.
How do you guys feel about that?
We feel that they was wrong for it. They just kind of pushed us out the door.
Yeah, they're not considering the local people at all. You know, I mean, most companies will. You know, they'll consider the local people. They're not even thinking about it.
They made an agreement that we'd have a contract all through the life of the pipeline, and they haven't stood up to honor their agreement.
Me, on my feeling, I think that's Alaska itself, discrimination against Indians.
Some people have been forced to look for work elsewhere. Bernie Klein says he's fortunate because he found another job in Kenai, but is bitter about the way natives have been treated.
But these people around here, there's just not going to be anything for them. I came up here 4 years ago and got to know these people. They got more pride than any people I ever met in my life. And they just ain't right. They don't deserve this. I know a lot of people around here got a lot of mouths to feed, and I don't know how they're going to do it. I just don't know. I think Alaska owes these people something. Right or wrong, that's the way it is.
Alaska Review went to Alyeska to get their side of the story and to ask them some questions. Questions like, why didn't the Meridian Contracting Corporation get their contract renewed to perform maintenance work for both on and off Ahtna land? What is their interpretation of Section G and H of the Omnibus Agreement? Have they discriminated against natives? Alyeska refused to answer our questions. However, they did issue a statement.
We've acknowledged from the outset that there are unresolved matters in dispute between Alyeska and Ahtna, and these matters are subjects of arbitration proceedings and litigation involving the two parties. It's been our position, however, that the proper forums for discussion of these issues are the courts, the formal proceedings before the arbitrator chosen by both parties, and direct communication and discussions between the parties. Furthermore, it has long been our policy to avoid public discussion of matters in litigation before the courts, and certain issues in this matter have been in litigation for several weeks. In fact, an order regarding some of these issues was entered in the U.S. District Court only last Thursday. The order, it appears to us, was aimed at enabling the issues to be resolved without, as the court described it, harassment of either party by the other. For all these reasons, we think it is in the best interest of all now to avoid public confrontation on the matter and rather to continue to work with informal channels toward resolution of the matters in dispute. We appreciate the invitation of Alaska Review to tell our side of the story and to respond to what have been described to us as serious accusations against Alyeska. However, we have tried from the beginning to avoid confrontations of this kind, which we feel could only lead to exacerbation of the very problems we're all trying to solve. If this long-standing policy of Alyeska results in a one-sided presentation of this issue in the news media now, then that's a penalty we'll pay, reluctantly of course, but willingly, in exchange for the ultimate fair and equitable resolution of the issues.
I think we felt like, we were a partner of this when the line was being built. I don't think that they should have used us people, They just abandoned us,
This shiny fleet of World War II bombers and transports are on contract to the federal...
So that was just a little clip of what the issues were in the 70s and what a lot of the Native people had to deal with when new industry was coming in the land. Now they were talking about Ahtna corporations. So when the land claims came and settled in 1971, they came up for all of Alaska, 12 corporations. And out of those 12 corporations, there are 4 of the corporations that are in Ahtna Dene Athabaskan lands. Doyan, which is the largest corporation, has 36 villages. Bristol Bay Native Corporation, or BBNC, has 2 villages that are Athabaskan, Dene, Non-Dalton, and Iliamna villages. Cook Inlet region, also within Athabaskan land, has 13 villages, and they have 1 Ahtna village. Ahtna Inc., and this is what the film was talking about, was more of the Ahtna Inc. corporation, and they were dealing exclusively with the Alyeska pipeline company. All of the 7 villages of the Ahtna Inc. are all Ahtna villages. So as you can see here, the Claims Settlement Act really gave leverage, a little leverage for companies to come in and work or tried to work with many of the Native people. It gave them a little bit more leverage to be able to say, you know, we are a corporation, we speak for our people, and there's a lot of things that came into Native Ahtna lands that were not welcomed. And I think, and this is why I think that there is skepticism with when a new item is coming onto their land, of who may take advantage of the people. So this is a long history that has happened to many of Native people, but also to the Athabaskan and Ahtna people. So these are things to think about and also to know. So this is just a brief history of, and a general brief history of things that are happening for Ahtna Dene people, and also Athabaskan Dene people. So with our next session, we'll kind of get into more of the resources, but I wanted to give a history, and maybe you can think about if there's anything else you might want to learn about the history of Athabaskan Dene people. So we say, Sayitsdet not snel yich. We hope that we see you again, and I hope that you're well. And I really do am excited to kind of continue on with our series and be able to share more of our Ahtna ways and also values that you may be able to share and learn more about our people as you work here in Ahtna country. Ahtna Dene Nene. Chinansigyu, Hana.